All righty. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you all
Mhm.
for joining today. So this topic, I think, for a lot of folks in Kentucky will be somewhat of a new one, although zoysia grass has been around for a while. Um, but when we're thinking about selecting a grass for our lawns in the state of Kentucky, I think it's helpful to really consider what are the driving factors that grow the grass, and then look at those limitations of where we live and what grass might fit our lawn the best. So the main four factors I always like to start my presentations off with this when growing grass is light, temperature, water, and nutrients. And across the state of Kentucky, we have really pretty good soils here. So most of the time, the limiting factor in the nutrients is just the nitrogen. So out of those four things, the things that we can control are really just the water and our fertilizer. The light, sun comes up when it comes up and goes down when it goes down. The temperature, the weather, we all talk about it, but we can't do anything to change it. So those are the two factors that we can control, is the water and our nutrients. But we need to take into consideration those other factors, such as the light and the temperature, and then just the rainfall as well. So considering selecting a grass. So aren't we the bluegrass state? Shouldn't we all use Kentucky bluegrass in our home lawns? Unfortunately, that is a misnomer. You can see here a Kentucky bluegrass lawn that probably looked phenomenal in the spring when we were getting sufficient rainfall. The days were shorter, the nights were cooler. But when you get into the heat of the summer in Kentucky, often our Kentucky bluegrass lawns will fail, become spotty like this, and lose that density that we really like out of them. So our other option, and still across the state, generally, this is my recommendation for folks who say they want to renovate their lawn, is to use a turf type tall fescue. So this is not your large 4-inch type varieties, not your Kentucky 31, but any of the newer varieties that have been bred for lawns are your turf type tall fescues, and they can look really fabulous, like the picture in this lawn here. But it's not a silver bullet because in the state, this is a picture going across the pedway here on campus at the university. And you can see this is what the lawn looks like when it's not irrigated and we're not getting sufficient rainfall. So every year, every summer, you drive around at some point in the summer, you're likely to see lawns that look like this. So our cool season grasses are going to grow best when temperatures are, high of 75, and we're getting those low temperatures in the 50 every night. So in the spring and the fall, they look really good. But the time that we use our grass the most throughout the summer, we'll often deal with struggling with drought and heat stress like this. So, should you consider a warm season grass, such as zoysia grass, for your lawn? Here is a updated 2023 USDA plant hardiness map. So both Lexington and Louisville in 2012, the last time this map was previously updated, were on the 6B scale. And now in 2023, we're up to a 7A. And even down in far western Kentucky, and even parts of bordering Tennessee there, are up to a 7B as their hardiness scale now. So we really are starting to think, does a warm season grass fit better now? And I think the farther southwest you are in the state of the Kentucky, the more convinced I would be that it's worth trying a grass like zoysia grass. So, kind of my thoughts behind this. There's a few things I saw over the past few years that really got me thinking, and maybe zoysia grass is a good option for the state of Kentucky. A couple years ago, I was at golf course in Moorhead and talking to the superintendent, and he had just a small patch of weeds he was wanting to get identified. And I said, what are you doing fertilizer wise? What are you doing water wise on your fairways? Everything looks pretty good. and he told me he had not fertilized the fairways for 5 years, and he had not run a full irrigation cycle on those fairways. And he sent me this picture just the other day here, and you can see a nice lush green fairway there in the back of that picture there. He had just received a little rainfall, but still has applied no fertilizer to those and is just mowing them weekly, and minimal irrigation to help maintain some of that color. So that really got me thinking, wow, this is maybe a good fit. And he's had those since 2014 there. So going on 10 years now. Another golf course in the Frankfurt area that had closed down. I knew they had Zoysiagrass fairways, and I stopped by there about a year after it had closed down because I just wanted to see what it looked like under no maintenance. And you can see here that this was a winter time, so the Zoysiagrass was dormant. But I was just really surprised and shocked that there were hardly any weeds in that fairway after a year of just sitting there without being mowed, without having any chemicals applied to it. And I thought, man, this is maybe something's going on here. We should really consider this grass. So again, 4 years after I took that picture, I stopped by there again. And one of the fairways that was behind some houses there, they had hired somebody just to mow that down with a zero turn mower about 3 to 4 inches tall. And it was almost completely weed free and looked, really good. The picture's a little bit blurry there, but overall in person, it looked really like a great lawn. And they had done nothing to it for 4 years except for just mow it. No herbicides, no fungicides were applied to it. But I went out, explored a little bit farther on the golf course that was closed, and you can see in between those tree lines there that Mother Nature was taking back over. So without mowing, it was starting to get filled with weeds, with small saplings and goldenrod and other things that were starting to pop up there. But in my mind, if all you did was mow your lawn and it looked like this on the left, most folks would be happy. This picture, taken in the middle of the summer. So that would just kind of what made me think zoysia grass in the state of Kentucky. So a little bit of the history of zoysia grass. Zoysia has been actively cultivated in Asia for around 1,000 years. You can see this picture here on the left is actually ancient burial grounds in South Korea that date from around 200 AD. And actually, at that time, they believed that the more golden brown that the burial mounds were in the winter, that the higher state of status of the person buried there was. But they have been managing this and really pretty grass there for thousands of years. But it wasn't until much later that zoysia grass came to the USA. Some plant explorers like Frank and Meyer here on the right brought zoysia grass from Japan. Some other explorers brought it from Korea, North Korea, China area. In late 1800s, early 1900s, zoysia grass was brought and cultivated in the United States. And from that point on, it has continued to grow with new varieties being released in the years to come. So when we talk about zoysia grass, we often just say zoysia, or folks will say I have zoysia grass. But zoysia is actually a genus of grass. And within that genus, there is 11 species. And out of those 11 species, we only have two that are grown in Kentucky. And that is Zoysia japonica, and the second is Zoysia matrella. So most of these are still in Asia, all the way down to Australia, areas like that. But in the United States, the only other one would be Zoysia tenuifolia, which would be in the very, very deep south, like Miami, Florida area. But north of that, it's going to be Zoysia japonica and Zoysia matrella, which is important to keep in mind when selecting your grass, because there are great differences in the cold tolerance and texture and drought tolerance of these different species. So zoysia grass is a warm season grass. We've kind of talked about the importance of this grass as far as how hot we get in Kentucky, but also we have cold winters here. So considering a warm season grass, another one is Bermuda grass. So often we think about Bermuda grass as a weed in home lawns, but there are newer varieties that have been bred for turf grass situations, which are excellent and have a high quality and would be desirable for lawns. So you can see here a quick way to tell these two grasses apart is typically zoysia stems and leaves will rise at a 90-degree angle from the stolon, whereas the Bermuda grass stems are going to rise at a 45-degree angle. Um, so thinking about the differences in these two warm season grasses, why in Kentucky might we not choose zoysia grass? Might we choose zoysia grass over Bermuda grass? So here, a picture on the left, you can see this is a researcher in California, and the top plot there, which is the dark green one, is Bermuda grass, and the middle plot there, with just a little bit of green in it, is zoysia grass. So you might think, well, why would I choose Bermuda grass or choose zoysia grass over Bermuda grass when with minimal irrigation, negligible rain, that the Bermuda grass is staying much greener. Um, we do not live in California. So I think it's important to remember that although drought tolerance is important, it does rain in Kentucky. So we get significant rainfall, usually happens, within 30 days. So we rarely are going to go above 30 days in the state of Kentucky without rainfall. And the other factor to take into mind is that we do have cold winters. So in the transition zone, we have hot summers and cold winters. So, as my predecessor, Dr. A.J. Powell, used to say, we can grow both warm season and cool season grasses equally bad. So, when we're making decisions like this, it's helpful to think about all of those factors. So, you can see here a chart. Both of these are drought tolerant, but it's relative. So, zoysia grass is drought tolerant, more drought tolerant than, say, Kentucky bluegrass or tall fescue, but not as drought tolerant as Bermuda grass. Zoysia grass and Bermuda both have heat tolerance. They grow very well, warm season grasses in the heat of the summer. We're not going to get hot enough in our summer to slow the growth of them. Zoysia grass also has a slow growth rate, where Bermuda grass is a very aggressive growing. And the main key here, I think, is that probably not every winter will we see winter kill on Bermuda grass if you were to choose that. But thinking every 4 to 5 winters, you get a really cold spell and you're likely to have significant winter kill, especially where there's shaded areas or wet areas in your lawn. So that's where zoysia grass is going to shine above Bermuda grass. And additionally, zoysia grass has improved shade tolerance compared to Bermuda grass. So here's just the picture also illustrating both of these pots were potted up at the same time. And within less than a year in the greenhouse, you can see the growth of the Bermuda grass on the bottom versus the zoysia grass on the top. So one of these is going to be creeping into your landscape beds, your sidewalks, and require much more mowing and edging and control of than the other. So that's one, although the slow establishment is a downside of zoysia grass, it is also its strongest positive when we think about long-term maintenance of zoysia. So adaptation of zoysia grass, it is species dependent. Zoysia japonicas are going to be more cold tolerant, whereas Zoysia matrellas are going to be less cold tolerant. But across the whole state of Kentucky, we can grow zoysia grass with success here. Zoysia cultivars in Kentucky. There are many, many varieties of zoysia grass, but what we locally have available at sod farms here are typically our Zoysia japonica, which is our Meyer grass, or also our Zenith, which is a seeded variety. And out our Zoysia matrellas, we have a variety grown here called Xeon. So the Xeon is going to be less cold tolerant than a Meyer or a Zenith. So you want to think about that predominantly, south of Louisville, Western Kentucky. You're going to have more success with that. If you're thinking Northern Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, we want to look at a Zoysia japonica. In addition to that, we also have a hybrid, which is a combination of the Zoysia japonica with the Zoysia matrella. And the variety that we have available in the state is called Innovation. So it's going to maintain that same cold tolerance that your Meyer grass has, but it is going to have a finer leaf blade, a denser stand than your other Meyers and Zeniths. So just thinking about cold tolerance and in Kentucky and how often we will have winter kill, can Zoysiagrass withstand our winters here in Kentucky. So there is a golf course just across the river in Cincinnati, Hyde Park Country Club, that installed Zoysia japonica in 1981. And these pictures are just from last year there. So just to give you a little comfort that it has been grown in this area for a very long time. It's not something brand new. But again, the japonica is going to be more cold tolerant than the matrella. Also, current use in the transition zone. There's an old article from 1946 that said Audubon Country Club in Louisville, Kentucky had just finished putting Zoysia matrella on their tee boxes and was very pleased with that and the lack of crabgrass in those tees. So from 1946 all the way forward, golf courses have been adopting Zoysia grass. Just a few years before this PGA tournament that was held at Valhalla this summer, they also converted all of their fairways to Xeon Zoysia grass. And as you drive around here in Lexington, and I'm sure some older neighborhoods around the state as well, you can still see Zoysia lawns present that have been growing there for a while. So Meyer Zoysia grass has been out since 1951. So it's been continually used and has withstand our weather patterns here in Kentucky. So just a little bit a visual there and a chart here of kind of the differences in the Zoysia species there. Our Zoysia japonica is going to be a wider leaf blade. It has good to fair shade tolerance and moderate cold hardiness. And the ideal mowing heights for that can be all the way down to a half an inch up to around a 2.5 inch. And the difference between that and the matrellas and establishment is you can buy seed as Zoysia japonica. For the matrellas, it is a much finer leaf blade, and the shade tolerance is actually better on the Zoysia matrellas. So especially Southwest Kentucky, if you're dealing with a lawn with lots of trees and shade, and you want the benefits of that warm season grass, you want to consider a matrella over the japonica for the shade tolerance, but it is less cold hardy than the japonica is. And the mowing heights on this can be mowed down all the way to a quarter of an inch, up to around 2 inches. So you can see here on the picture on the left, the darker green pot there. These are just plugs that have been grown out in the greenhouse. Hasn't been mowed since I brought it into the greenhouse in May, and it's about 6 inches tall. That's as tall as it gets. The lighter green there is a Zoysia japonica. And then the picture on the right there, this plug I brought in just here recently, and it's mowed down around a half an inch. So you can see there's a wide variety in the height of these plants and how they can be maintained. So they're quite versatile in that way. So positives of Zoysia grass, shade tolerance. Again, tall fescue is going to have a greater shade tolerance than Zoysia grass. Zoysia grass is going to have a greater shade tolerance than Bermuda grass. When we get into the species differences in Zoysia, the matrella is going to have more shade tolerance than the japonica. Very few pests on Zoysia grass. Really, the only thing that we have to worry about there is bill bugs, and this is usually on golf courses when you're maintaining, at a half inch. On the lawn, we typically don't see that issue as much. When we think about nutrient requirements, um, Zoysiagrass will do very well with low fertilizer. As you can remember the picture of the Moorhead Golf Course there, no fertilizer for 5 years. It did really well. And over fertilization may lead to excessive thatch. You can see here that real spongy layer above there, which can cause problems with disease and water holding. So, in addition to that, the research shows that there's likely no turf quality benefit with applying more than 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square foot per year. So really a low input grass. Once it's established, you don't have to do much to it. Very disease resistant. There is relatively few diseases. The only one of real concern would be large patch, but this is only occasionally a problem, and there are fungicides available to use for that. Weed tolerance. Zoysia has been reported across the board to be very a weed tolerant grass once it's established. And because it is a warm season grass, when it goes dormant, it allows you some unique ways to treat those weeds. So you can use non-selective herbicides such as the glyphosate in the wintertime, say around February when it's completely dormant. You get a good 55 sunny degree day. You can go in and spray green areas. And in fact, some people will actually burn the zoysia grass late in the winter to help kill some of the weed seed there and to increase the green up in the spring. And the picture there on the right again is the golf course that closed down, did nothing but mow, and hardly any weeds at all in that. Uh, so zoysia grass, one of its downsides is the slow establishment, but it's also one of its greatest strengths because you can see Bermuda grass here. It's taken over this landscape bed and dripping down the wall. It's just a very aggressive grower. So it's going to require more mowing, more management than a zoysia grass will once it's established. And also gives opportunity for some unique lawns. This is one of my best friend's lawns. He lives in Southern Ohio, and he has spring beauties that grow in his lawn every spring. His zoysia grass there is dormant, so it doesn't need mowed. And about the time these Virginia spring beauties start to fade, that's when the grass starts to green up. So by the time he mows, they're fading away, and it's really the best of both worlds there. Downsides of zoysia grass, it is a warm season grass, and culturally, I think it is more acceptable the farther south you go. But the dormancy is an issue for folks. It's important to remember that in the winter, it is going to go brown like this. Uh, but the huge benefit of that is the reduced mowing. So if you can get over, and I think zoysia looks good when it's that golden brown. Um, and it also allows for unique herbicide options. Um, and the big thing to remember with this is we're trading off. We're going to get our best quality in the summer months when we're using our lawn the most, and it's going to be dormant in the winter when we're not outside as much. Uh, Seeded varieties are very limited, so that adds the expense of establishing it vegetatively. But there's really only two seeded varieties available, and typically they're not our best quality varieties. So there's four methods of establishment, and all of these methods require patience. That is the big thing with zoysia grass. Is its downside is the establishment period. So we're thinking, really a year, 2 years to get good establishment of this grass. Beyond that, it's going to be great for you, but you really have to sit there and be patient for a long time waiting to get established. So there's four methods we can do. One is to seed. But again, this one can be tough just because these varieties are older, not as dense, not as fine leaf blade. We're not getting the genetics that we are with the breeding that has come along in the vegetative varieties. And also we're going to deal with a lot of weed issues as those seeds are very slow to establish and to spread across the lawn. the recommended way is typically vegetatively growing this in, and this can be done by sprigging, which is where the sod farm cuts up the zoysia grass into those stolons and rhizomes and stems, and you spread those out evenly across the yard there that you've prepared. You can see the picture on the left there. Those were sprigs that we established here last summer on some research plots. The other option is to do plugging. So in this instance, you would buy sod and then you can buy pluggers like you see on the picture here. And you would take 2-inch plugs and you're going to spread those across the lawn. And they will eventually grow into each other. The most expensive, but the most fulfilling, and you're going to get a full lawn right away, is to full sod your lawn and buying the sod there. When we look at establishment, because it is a warm season grass, we're not wanting to do it in the spring or fall, but we want to do that in late spring or early summer to give it, once the soil temperatures are getting to, around 60 degrees, to allow that zoysia grass to take off and grow throughout the summer. So once we have it established, maintenance on the zoysia grass, it's important to remember we do not want to manage this like other grasses. With zoysia grass, less is more, especially once we have a full lawn established. Over fertilizing is going to give a spongy lawn, increase disease potential, and cause us to have less than satisfactory lawn with zoysia grass. So by doing less fertilizer, we're going to actually improve that lawn or maintain the quality above where it needs to be. And we're also going to think about maintaining this grass in the summer. So much of what we do with our tall fescues and our bluegrass, we're doing in the fall, and in the spring, our fertilizing, our weed treatments. Whereas with zoysia grass, we're going to be focusing that more in the summer months. Zoysia grass is a very dense, wear and tear resistant grass, which means that we need to maintain very sharp mower blades so that we're not tearing those blades when we mow them. Also, we want to be careful that we're not just using the same herbicides that we use for our cool season lawns. Make sure that what you use on your lawns is labeled for zoysia grass. The warm season grasses and the cool season grasses rarely have herbicides that can be used on both of those. So irrigation wise, we want to irrigate to maintain green color if desired. But remember that we really don't have extensive drought periods in the state of Kentucky. So zoysia grass, while it will, as a mechanism to survive, start to go dormant in color, it typically bounces back no problem after you get a sufficient rainfall. Also, if you do have bad spots in your lawn, we can easily take plugs, using a plugger, using any kind of hand trowel, and fill in those bad spots and allow those areas to spread. So you really have your own sod farm once you've got it established. And over the years, we want to consider dethatching the lawn as desired. That is all I had there on that. If there is any questions, I'm happy to take them now. There's my email if you'd like to email me, and phone number as well. I appreciate your time. Thank you.